Yasutaka Nakata is a producer and DJ who grew up in Kanazawa, Japan, where he started making electronic music from his love of video games and influence of Yellow Magic Orchestra's album Technodon. During the 90s, Nakata started writing music for fashion shows at school and for upcoming pop idols until finally meeting a crucial figure of this whole story, and that being Toshiko Kojima. Both only being 17 at the time, Nakata and Kojima had formed the band Capsule, though this was in 1997 and the band wouldn't release music only up until 2001, as Nakata had moved back to Tokyo to complete his studies. But once they got back together, the band started working on their debut, releasing Sakura as their first single for their album High Collar Girl. It's quite clear to hear the Shibuya-kei influence, particularly from the likes of Pizzicato 5, where Capsule would actually be accused of being clones of. But this is where things get a little bit more interesting, because Shibuya-kei pretty much ran its course by 2001, with many of its originators disbanding, such as Pizzicato 5 and Flipper's Guitar, which I've already made videos on and you can check out after this. In this case still, Capsule in most discussions were considered as a post-Shibuya-kei band, or better yet, the originators of Neo-Shibuya-kei. This Neo-Shibuya-kei movement, along with Nakata's future collaborations, would pretty much lead to the defined sound of J-pop in the 2010s, with acts such as Perfume, Kyary Pamyu Pamyu, and many more. But first, let's get to the root of Capsule. The release of their debut album was a bit of a learning curve for the band, as it was released under Yamaha, who had full control of the track's arrangement, by taking the original demo tracks and re-recording them with professional musicians, which was far from what Nakata initially wanted, and decided from this point on he would have full control of his songs. Ditching that ultra-polished sound, Nakata opted for a more authentic and rough mix, which I would actually mark as a distinct characteristic of Nakata's production style, eventually leading to his biggest success in 2008. And this is what separates Nakata from other pop producers. He just wants to make what he personally thinks sounds good to him, with Nakata saying, even if people think it's good, and if I don't like it, it means nothing. The bottom line is to make music that I want to hear. Their first 6 albums, Capsule would be as Shibuya-kei as it can get, not only from their music, but from the album covers and visuals, working with known Shibuya-kei acts such as Copter 4016882 and Sonic Costa Pop. Here's just a glimpse of what those albums sounded like. But it wasn't until 2003 which would mark the start of a new era after meeting 3 particular girls. There's probably no need for an introduction, but for those who don't know, Perfume first came in the scene in 2000 when Ayaka Nishiwaki, known as A-chan, Yuka Kashino, known as Kashiyuka, and former band member Kawashima formed a group in a talent academy called Actors School Hiroshima. Fast forward 2 years where they debuted in 2002, with Yuka Kawashima pulling out to focus on her studies and being replaced with Ayano Omoto, or as we know her as Nochi, as the third member and naming themselves Perfume, while releasing their debut single Omajinai Porori. In 2003, they met Nakata, who had produced for some of their music, but by 2008, he took full control of the band's musical direction and songwriting. But this doesn't mean that he owns the band, rather that he's been trusted as their solo producer, with Nochi and Kashiyuka saying, "We've been together since we were teenagers and working with the same producer ever since. We have 100% confidence in him. Recently, he tried out future-based music with us and it surprised us at first, but he knew exactly why we had to choose that genre at the time. He had a good reason to do it, so we decided to go with the flow." Now, the interesting thing is, Perfume weren't always considered future pop, as many described them. Rather, they were very much Shibuya-kei, and this made sense since Nakata was working on both Capsule and Perfume at the same time. And if you don't believe me, well, let's take a look at their first releases with Nakata. This sounds like a song from a very old Nintendo DS game. I love it. I couldn't agree more with this comment. Towards the mid-2000s, Capsule would shift to more of an electronic Daft Punk sound, which I would say would be a good testing ground for Perfume, with their debut album in 2008, Game. But first, let's dissect it from the core, with Capsule's 2005 album, Lounge Designer Killer. In 2005, Capsule will come to a turning point, sonically speaking, with the release of their 6th album, Lounge Design Killers, appropriately named as this would be the last lounge/Shibuya-kei album of its kind from the band. This album did, however, mix in not only lounge but some electronic bangers, while also including the stripped-down bossa nova track, Tic Tac, a song that had its moment over on TikTok, funny enough. But it sounds like Teleportation and Glider being the building blocks of this electro shift that would feel all too familiar for us now. These few songs alone would turn into complete concepts, as skipping to 2006, Fruits Clipper and Sugarless Girl would be released, doubling down on that signature Capsule sound for the next few years to come.
Not to forget, of course, in that same year, Nakata would release Electro World and Computer City with Perfume, further expanding and connecting that electro sound across his other projects.
But why the shift in sound? Well, it was necessary for Nakata to step away from the Shibuyakei sound that had died out at the time. But one of the main reasons was because he wanted to escape creating music that felt too effeminate, as he found more and more men listening to his music the same way girls would. So Nakata decided to make his music more masculine, which also explains the Sugarless Girl cover art, but also the inclusion of heavy electro 4/4 beats, resulting in an uprise of new fans and mainstream appeal, which would explain Perfume's boom to success in 2008. Now, we all know Polyrythmn. This infectious and timeless track was part of Perfume's 2008 debut album Game. The thing about Polyrythmn was it became an insane hit that took over Japan when it was first released as a single, being featured as a commercial for NHK's National Recycling Program, and also being part of Car 2's soundtrack, which I had no idea up until now. The song was also just a hint of how Nakata's rule-bending of making pop music would become a strong point that actually garnered him and Perfume's success, with the song's odd time signature changes with the 5/8 bridge, 6/8 timing in the vocals, and 3/2 in the drums. Now, those who aren't into music theory, majority of songs and pop songs have a 4/4 beat or rhythm. Now, if you want a deep dive on this, I'll let you check out Yogev Gaby's video. Sorry for the mispronunciation. Anyways, the label considered removing the bridge as they thought it was too unusual for mainstream listeners, but that would prove the opposite, as this undoubtedly is one of, if not Perfume and Nakata's biggest song. Although there is a version without the bridge for radio, this was never performed or included in the album.
Surprisingly though, throughout the years of their success with each other, Nakata and Perfume's relationship is strictly business, and the girls have mentioned quite a few times they hardly know anything about Nakata's personality, and that he's someone who comes off quite strict and too focused, especially when they first started working together. And Koshijima shares the same sentiments, saying, "He's very strict, he doesn't really compliment us, nor does he scold us or give us directions, so it's kind of silent servitude." Despite this though, throughout the years, Nakata and Perfume have been proving that Polyrythmn was no one-hit wonder, with the success of their many albums such as Level 3, JPN, Triangle, and Future Pop to name a few, with Nebula Romance being their latest release. They also have many well-choreographed music videos accompanying their songs, with one of my favorites coming from the JPN album, Nachireo no Koshite. Bringing the spotlight back to Capsule, following the success of Fruits Clipper, Sugarless Girl, and Perfume's Game. 2008 would be the year for Nakata, as Capsule hit their biggest selling record with their 10th album, More and More and More, selling over 67,000 copies. They will continue this hot streak of releasing albums with Player, World of Fantasy, and Stereoworks to name a few, with their latest album being Metropulse, releasing in 2022. Now, despite the insane output of music from Nakata across all of his projects, it would actually become more of a detriment to his collaborators, one especially being Meg and Amy Suzuki. Meg, being a fashion designer and singer, dropped her first album with Nakata in 2007 with Beam. Funny enough, it was released on the same day as Flashback. This album was a really interesting one with a mix of electronic music like Sweet Luxury, but also some more toned down tracks like Love Letter. Now, the problem here is that Meg would start working with Nakata after her album Maverick. One of the main reasons behind her departure was the album was produced in only 3 weeks, which Meg wasn't too satisfied about as it felt too rushed, but also mainly due to the fact that her albums were sonically way too similar to Capsule and Perfume, leaving her in a spot where she didn't have her own defined sound, and this would be the same case for acts such as Amy Suzuki and Perfume, as it was very evident to see the similarities when comparing the albums during this time. Now, personally speaking, I don't really mind. Yeah, the songs do sound similar, yet still pretty distinct and unique in their own way. Just like how when Meg covered Capsule's Dreamin' Dreamin', which is my personal favorite version. I find each song fun to listen to individually, but I can see how this can lead to some artists feeling trapped, as feeling like nothing more but a feature to Nakata's production. Although Nakata would still be breaking through hit after hit with Perfume and with another artist in 2011. A name that is always brought up when talking about J-pop and Nakata is none other than Kyary Pamyu Pamyu. Personally, I haven't heard much of his songs besides of course Pom 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 and Candy Candy, which I'd say is one of those starter pack songs when getting into J-pop music. Kyary Pamyu Pamyu is of course one of the biggest artists that Nakata is working with, as many of her songs have broken past that 10 million views mark on YouTube. And Pom 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 was actually her debut in the scene in 2011, going absolutely viral in Japan, hitting a 9th position peak on the top 100 Billboard Japan. But also topping the charts on an international scale, hitting the 15th position spot in the US World Billboard charts, number 4 in Belgium, and weirdly enough, hitting number 1 in Finland of all places. And thanks to Pom Pom Pom's success, the song single-handedly sparked an international kawaii culture boom around around the world, which is still felt to this day, bringing over Harujaku fashion and bringing more Japanese idols into the international scene. Now, just like Meg, who covered Dreamin' Dreamin', Pamyu 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 has covered a few Capsule songs such as Super Scooter Happy, RBG, and Jelly. It doesn't stop there, as Nakata has worked with a number of musicians who we are all too familiar with, such as Charlie XCX, Zed, M-Flow, Madion, Passion Pit, and more, while also composing one of the closing tracks for the 2016 Rio Olympics. Now that we're all caught up on the backstory of Nakata's work, what's the latest on them now? As of 2025, Nakata is still going strong with his projects, but mostly with Perfume, as the next album, being part 2 of Nebula Romance, is set to be released in a few weeks. As for Capsule, it's been pretty quiet since their 2022 album Metropulse. Comparing all of his works, Pamyu 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 is of course the biggest in terms of numbers, though I'd say Perfume has a wider international presence with an active fan base, whereas Capsule holds a special place within that niche Japanese electro and shibuyakei scene. And why do I say all this? Well, this just puts into perspective the influence and brilliance of Yasutaka Nakata. Whether you know him or not, if you at least listen to some form of pop music, I can guarantee you that Yasutaka Nakata's production has no doubt entered your eardrums. Thank you for watching.